Welcome to the Sober Unicorn. We are a gay-hosted, all-inclusive podcast about sobriety and addiction recovery for the LGBT plus community and all of our allies. I am your host, Holden, and thank you for joining us today. Hey, everybody, it's Holden here with the Sober Unicorn yet again. I hope everybody's doing well, and if you're not having a good day, hopefully it does get better. So today is going to be a little different. Um, Daniel is joining us today, and Daniel was on, I don't know what episode it is, but it's one of the episodes here on the podcast. And me and him have been in contact over the past few months, ever since meeting at kind of meeting and passing at the Big D Roundup in Dallas, Texas, and he has actually requested to interview me, which is going to be kind of an interesting turn for everybody listening. So everybody say hello to Daniel. How are you, Daniel?
I am doing okay. I'm better than I was this morning when we were communicating.
Good.
Um, but I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. Today, today's my day off, so I've had this is my second recording of the day. I had two cancellations, but I was able to get like somebody in really quickly. And she was awesome, and just kind of been cleaning, just doing my house bitch duties, as I would say.
Yeah, I need to do some of that myself.
I'm preparing to move. I'm going to be moving back to San Antonio um in January.
Hmm.
So I decided against Atlanta, decided against Chattanooga, and definitely don't want to go to Dallas.
Oh, okay.
There's too much Dalitude over there. No, I'm kidding.
Well,
No, I mean San Antonio's home. Even though I go there and after a few weeks I get super tired. I mean, after a few years, I'm like, oh, San Antonio. But then I've lived in California, I've lived in Fort Worth, I've traveled, and it's like every time it's like, oh, I want to go back. I miss the people. I miss friends that I've had for 10, 15 years now. Um, and so I just think it's like time for me to go home and get settled and hopefully find me a man that'll deal with all my crazy. So, anyways, but I mean, I know the episode is about me, but I will hand it over to you and let you take control. Even though you're not daddy today.
all right. Well, thank you. And so, like Holden mentioned, my name is Daniel, and I am a member of a 12-step fellowship. I myself, I have been sober for a while, and I use the 12 steps to maintain my sobriety. That's a choice that works for me. I understand that there are many avenues to sobriety and many types of sobriety for people that suit their lives. And I respect all of those. We'll kind of make those types of things clear at the top. However, my experience comes from 12 step basically because that's this is what my experience is. Um, so the questions that I may ask at some point, I don't have anything planned, but we're just gonna have a discussion, and the questions that I may ask, they may come from kind of slanted from a 12-step point of view, but that's why. There's no gotcha questions. This is your life. There are no right or wrong answers. This is your path, your journey, and who's to say, you know, that it's wrong. So just kind of wanted to lay that out right off the top. So what's been going on with you? I know a couple of episodes ago, you had a situation that you shared with the listeners. Um, so what's been going on since then?
Oh, goodness gracious. So of course, I know what episode we're referring to. It's probably the relapse episode. Um, that happened, I believe it was September 7th, that relapse. I was, I would say a month and a half sober almost. Um, not really doing any action behind any type of 12 step or any type of action behind any sobriety or trying to keep myself sober. And so I went to Florida. I've been vacationing a lot. And I went to Florida 2 weeks ago now, I believe it was 2, 3 weeks. And unfortunately, had another relapse. I'm in Florida, and so now I am going on 3 weeks sober. Um, and but this time, what's weird is this from this relapse compared to the last relapse, like I feel really different, but in a very positive way. So other than that, just kind of figuring out where I'm going to move, trying to get back and motivated into the podcast again, and kind of getting back to being motivated for my sobriety.
Okay. And also, I guess, just for disclosure, up to this point in my recovery, relapse has not been part of my story. However, I by no means believe that I am immune from relapse. I believe my recovery depends upon me taking action every day to maintain my sobriety and recovery. And if I am unable or unwilling to do that, then yeah, I'm susceptible to a relapse at some point. Um, so now that you've had a little time, a little distance from both incidents, do you have any insights about what led up to either or both? Or
Mm, um, yes and no. So do I know the reason I was finally like, oh, let's smoke some meth and snort some lines of coke? No, but leading up to it, I of course went through a 12-step fellowship, and um, for my first solid 3 to 4 months, I was super gung ho sobriety. That is kind of my entire focus, and I faked it till I made it. Especially when it came to the higher power situation, and I thought, well, if I just fake it, it'll come reality eventually, and it didn't for me. We as gay people deal with a lot of trauma, um, growing up in a church or just kind of distancing ourselves from a religious past. And so I kind of was like, after 4 months of sobriety, I was like, ooh, I got this shit. Like, I hadn't drank, I hadn't used. And so I felt that I could do this on my own, but also keeping the connections and the fellowship involved and still checking into meetings here and there. But after getting terminated from my job. It's kind of school got a little hectic as well. So my meetings, I was trying to get to like 2 to 3 a week, and now it became one a week, once every 2 weeks. And when the first relapse hit, I feel it was very much so I had zero direction. Like I had lost motivation in sobriety, I had lost my job, I had dropped out of school. I mean, everything that was going for me kind of was starting to fail and fumble. And I wasn't using the tools that were provided to me to help me get through that. And that's why I chose to use the first time. The second time here in Florida, um,
okay, well, let's stop with the first time, okay?
hmm
Because you shared a lot there. So the first time, and the other thing too is like you shared at the top, we have been in communication for a while now since the Big D Roundup, which was back in the end of May. And I think we know each other rather well. I mean, we speak very candidly to each other. Um, and so I remember when you shared with me about losing. Actually, I remember you shared about you had an incident with your manager, and I didn't say anything because it wasn't my place. But in my mind, I was like, "Whoa, red flag!" Right? And then very shortly after that, you shared that yeah, you had been asked to resign, and I was like, "Oh no," because I've been through something similar a couple of years back, and I I knew that it was the hardest test of my recovery because it was so scary. The uncertainty of being unemployed was terrifying, and it tested me to the core. Um, and I think I kind of talked with you a little about that back then. You know, um, and so yeah, and then I remember asking you once. I don't know if you remember this. We were just chatting one day, and I said, "So, what are you doing to stay sober today?" You remember me asking you that?
You did, and I probably said not a damn thing.
Yeah, pretty much. And then I was like, oh, okay. You know, and that's a question that my sponsor started asking me way back, right? Because, you know, like I said, for me, recovery is an action. I need to be doing something um, to maintain my recovery. And yeah, so honestly, that was another red flag. But okay. Um, and then yeah, things played out the way they played out, right?
Hmm.
And often this has been my observation with people, you know, once a relapse happens, yeah, then they're kind of shaken awake, right? They realize, oh wow. So, you know, that was a red flag, but um, you know, I mean, what can you do, right? You offer support and you hope for the best, you pray for your friends, and then, you know, life goes on. Um, and then you went away, and then um, yeah, the slip happened, and then it kind of shook you awake, which is often a good thing, right? Because then many people realize, well, this is where I need to reset and kind of look at what I've been doing and take things more seriously, and then go on, right? I mean, that's because relapse is a normal part of recovery, right? I mean, recovery is not in a straight line. It's often stops and starts and two steps forward and one step backward. And you know, this whole pass fail idea that we often get is very damaging to us. So okay, so then not too long after that trip um, was wait, so you relapsed?
In Fort Worth.
Okay, right, okay, and then you had a trip coming up shortly after that, right?
Correct. I went to Florida. I went to Fort Lauderdale.
Okay,
Um, and I had like at this point I felt I was stronger. I would say not strong in my sobriety, but just coming back from the relapse, coming out with that episode that I was like, this isn't gonna happen again. At least I don't think it was. And I went down there for a guy. And they were like, "Oh, you want to go hang out with our friend after the bar?" We were at the bar all night. I didn't drink. I haven't drank in almost a year. I was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, let's do it." And needless to say, that friend like does copious amounts of cocaine. And at this point, I mean, I'm gonna get very candid in this episode. So if you're turned off by sexual innuendos, sorry about it. But penises were out. A lot of sexual things are going on, and cocaine started flying. And so I was like, but fuck it. Because I think at this point, it was, I mean, we're late at night. I'm exhausted, but it's like, I don't want to not be included, but yet I also knew what the repercussions were. Um, so I was like, screw it. And I think it was also because I wanted to sleep with the guy that flew out there, his friend, and his friend is the one that was providing. So I do it. We all, of course, are awake. I mean, we're up roughly to like 6 in the morning, um, and all playing around with each other. And then that was a Friday night. And then we slept pretty late into Saturday and woke up and I was like, hey, like he wanted to go out to the bar, but I did not want to like be around those friends because now I'm already starting that like mindset of, oh my God, what the hell did I do last night? Um, And so I was like, hey, can I just have the hotel room by myself tonight? Kind of just collect myself, maybe play with somebody else when I'm down in Florida because it's Chaser Central and I'm a big girl. And so when we're out at the bar, like all these like fine ass chasers trying to be hollering. So I end up hitting up a guy on Growler. Um, and he's like, yeah, come over. Like, let's hang out. We'll of course, hang out with our wangs out. I was like, all right, cool. So I go over there and like 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes into playtime, he asked me, he's like, "Do you smoke?" And I was like, "Well, I vape." I was like, "What do you mean? Like, what else are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, I party and um smoke cigarettes." I was like, "Oh." He's like, "Are you cool with that?" And like, without even thinking, and I think it was more like I didn't think about it because like this intercourse was already happening. Like literally, these questions are flying like while we're fully having intercourse. Um, and so he gets up, pulls it out, and next thing you know, I'm using. Um, and the thing is, with that certain substance, when I use, I become very insatiable in the sexual aspect. So after him, I go back to the hotel and I end up sleeping with like probably six more people throughout the night, six plus people. I don't really recall a lot of it. Um, and of course, coming back, I ended up, of course, staying awake all night Saturday night, into Sunday, actually calling into the hotel to check out an hour later because I had somebody in the room. Um, and I get home and come to find out the person that I flew to go see had a boyfriend the entire time. And every night we were going to sleep in the hotel room, he was leaving the room and going home to his boyfriend. And then every morning when I was waking up and I was like, "Where are you at?" He's like, "Oh, I had to go to the dispensary or I had to run an errand. I'll be right there." Because he booked a hotel like 2 miles from his home. And which made me then at this point feel completely manipulated, used, taken advantage of. Because yes, it was still my choice to use, but this individual saw the struggle that I had mental health wise after the first relapse. Um, and he saw the pain that I went through, and he still chose to take me to a friend's place that he knew narcotics were going to be at. Um, he never asked me beforehand, "Is it cool if we go there?" I'm already there, being presented with it. And at this time, of course, a month and a half in, I'm not 9.5 months strong in my sobriety anymore. I'm not a year strong. I'm a month and a half in, and was still very weak mentally coming off the first relapse. So um, I said, "Fuck it." And so when the next night, Saturday night, the other drug came about, um, I mean, shit, I had already relapsed the night before. Might as well just make it a party weekend in Florida then and deal with the consequences of everything when I get home. Um, the huge difference that I found between the two relapses is the first relapse, the substance was very minimal, wasn't good. Um, so yes, I relapsed, but it didn't scare me awake, as you said. Yes, it made me emotional, but it didn't wake me up. The second relapse did because the substance was plentiful and the substance was good. And that's what scared me because I got that feeling back that I haven't had in a year. I forgot who I was. I forgot, while high, I forgot the morals that I had set for myself and the limitations and the boundaries, and like everything disappeared again for me, which was very, very scary for me because I don't want it to happen again because I got a taste of what I used to be like when in my addiction, and it's not pretty, and I don't like that person, and um, so I think that's why this time after this relapse, I'm a little bit more um, motivated and excited to start taking some action and doing something in order to make sure that I don't slip up again because I'm afraid if I go out again, I won't come back.
Okay, so now we're going to move into a little bit of a responsibility section.
Oh shit.
And you've taken responsibility. You said, nobody forced you to use and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so remember, I don't know if you remember, but I asked, before you went to Florida, I asked you a specific question. Do you remember what that question was? And I said, don't.
Actually, flip it and reverse it. Like, oh my god, I can't remember the singer right now. Jesus Christ, I can't remember. Anyway, Missy Elliott. There we go. Um, it was before I went to Atlanta that you asked me this question.
Yeah. So I said, are you going as a sober person or are you setting aside recovery until you get back? So now that you went and you had that experience and came back, what
Well,
is
so the experience, so the question that you asked me, so I of course went to Florida 3 weeks ago. I went to Atlanta last weekend. Um, so of course I was 2 weeks sober, flying, well, a week and a half ish sober going into Atlanta when you asked me that question. Um, and I went to Atlanta as a sober person. Um, and I actually went to a meeting, a 12-step meeting while in Atlanta. I made sure, even though I was there, I flew in like a Friday night, um, had Saturday there, and flew home Sunday morning. Um, I made sure I set aside time during my trip to focus on some kind of recovery.
Okay. And so backing that question up, do you think you went to Florida as a sober person or a person that set aside recovery until you got
You
back?
know, it's weird that you asked that because going into Florida, I think it was Friday before the cocaine happened. We had just woken up from a nap. I'm sifting through the Find a Meeting app, and there was a meeting like a mile from where I was in the hotel, and I'm like, hey, like I'm thinking about tomorrow at 7 o'clock, like going to this meeting, this AA meeting, if that's okay with you. It's only an hour. And he's like, yeah, sure, that's totally okay, like no big deal. And of course, Friday night. So here I am, like looking at meetings to go to hours before I'm doing blow. And of course, the next day, I'm coming off of course, I relapsed Friday night. Like now I feel like a fraud again. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to no damn AA meeting the day after I relapsed in Florida. Um, and then Saturday night became the meth.
And I understand that you felt that way, but you do understand that nowhere does it say that you cannot go to a 12-step meeting if you've, you
I
know,
know. I mean, hell, people go to 12-step meetings ball high and
right,
dry.
right.
It's and
I'm just making that distinction. I mean, because that's people often feel that way, but I just kind of want to just kind of said that, yeah, I mean, a 12-step meeting is always available to anyone, right? I mean, but oftentimes because of our own kind of shame or guilt or whatever, we block ourselves off from that source of help, right?
um.
Um,
So I think it's more or less when I reestablish, I wanted to reestablish my home group, um, with the people that I've surrounded myself with in recovery this entire time. I did not want to go to a meet. I understand I don't have to reestablish like that moment, that I was safe. I went to the meeting in Florida, but I feel that after Friday night, that I was like, fuck the AA meeting. I'm gonna party this weekend, and then I'll deal with reestablishing when I get home.
right.
Um, and that's what happened.
Yeah, and that's fair. Yeah, I mean that's fair. Like I said, I'm not judging the choice. I was just kind of making it,
Yeah,
just
and I
the
think
obvious
that's an
that it was
addict's mindset. So yesterday I was
right.
on a phone call, a conversation with a fellow in, I think they work the AA program if I'm not mistaken. Um, and they're in San Antonio, and we were kind of discussing everything that kind of went down. And they asked me, "Do you identify as an addict rather than an alcoholic?" And I kind of paused. And he was like, "Well, there's my answer." And I was like, "Hold up, bitch! Like, let me explain myself."
Yeah,
But as I kind of look back into what they stated about like a non-addict doesn't just go, "Ooh, let's do some meth." Like
right.
that is not a normie person behavior. And so I look back at my behavior when I was in active addiction with meth, and that behavior was the same exact behavior that I encountered in Florida. So I was like, "Ooh, I may have not have been like the rock bottom addict when it came to meth, um, but I was still an addict nonetheless."
You know, it's funny because to me, addict and alcoholic are synonymous. I mean, if I'm at an AA meeting, I'll say alcoholic, but if I'm at an other meeting, I'll say an addict. And to me, they're synonymous because I can be just as obsessed about alcohol as I am about drugs, as I am about men, as I'm about any number of things. But yeah, it's synonymous for me. Um, so okay, so um, going back to responsibility. So do you feel? Okay, so you were upset because this person that you went to see misrepresented themselves, and you found out some uncomfortable things, some awful things, really, and you felt used, and then you acted out based on that. How do you feel about that choice now?
Well, the acting out, like I didn't find out about the whole being lied to until after I was already back in Texas.
Okay,
Yeah, so it was, I think after I felt that in order for me to sleep with the friend of his that was there at the house, that I had to partake in a way. Or that I just wanted to be a part of the good time. That like everybody's sitting here drinking, everybody's doing blow, and here I am just like la ti da di da sober person. So it's
so
it's so important though that I have to make sure that I have to be super mindful on who I surround myself with.
right. So how do you feel now about the knowledge that this person who you had chatted with online for a period um, seemed seemed caring, seemed interested, seemed to want to spend time with you, was then just so kind of indifferent about you being around narcotics, knowing your history,
It just shows me that that person is just as sick as I am. I think that I can't fault him because I
right?
mean he smokes weed. From my understanding, he does other stuff. Unbeknownst to me, he's never told me anything, so I can't fully say whether he is or not. But um, the thing is, an addict's an addict. Whether it's marijuana, whether it's alcohol, whether it's meth, whether it's cocaine, is still an addiction. And I think at the end of the day, he was worried for himself. Just like when I go out and I was on meth and I go blow through 12 men in a weekend, sleeping with them, I'm doing it for selfish reasons. And his selfish reason was to have a guy that he finds very attracted to fly in for the weekend for a sexcation. He didn't really care about me nor the journey that I was on, as long as he got what he wanted from it.
So do you feel that you that by not taking responsibility for your own recovery, you gave him too much power?
Yes, because when when the moment cocaine was pulled out, I should have said, "Hey, I need to go. If you want to stay, go ahead and stay, but I'll get an Uber or whatever." Like
But
at the end of the day, I'm the only one responsible for my own recovery and saying no and choosing not to use.
right.
And I feel I put that in somebody else's hands, um, and expected them to have the same um, like recovery, not the same recovery journey, but put it in their hands in hopes that they would have the same respect for my journey that I tried to have. Um, so yeah, I mean it's entirely my fault. But
And it's not about blame, but I mean, really,
yeah,
so what? So do you think that your desire to have this sexual encounter with this other person was the tipping point? Like, do you think if the that third person was someone that you were not interested in, and the whole thing had gone down the same way, do you think you would have said, "Oh, what the fuck is going on? I'm out," or do you think it still would have gone down the same way?
I don't think so. I really don't. I don't think if I did not find that other individual attractive, I don't think I would have did it because for me, when it came to multiple partners at the same time, during the last 6 years, it's always been under the influence. So I've never really taught myself how to engage in sex or how to engage in this playtime without the substance. So it's like, well, how do I sit here and get I mean, again, everybody's sorry for all the sexual misconduct, but um it's like, how do I sit here and get trained on by two guys or three guys without this? um and so I think and I've never really had multiple partners at the same time without any substance, so I just think it brought back old times, old memories, and it was just kind of a reflex for me to sit there and do this drug.
So do you think it was the need to have the substance to give you the ability to have the sexual encounter, or it was the desire for the sexual encounter which drove you
Yes,
to use the substance?
I think it's the desire for the sexual encounter, because the
Okay.
thing is, without the sexual encounter being involved, like I don't want meth, I don't want cocaine, I don't want any substance, and it's like I don't crave it otherwise. It's only when the sexual promiscuity is kind of being played into it that I'm like, well, I haven't had sex in 6 months, so why don't I just do this substance? And instead of sleeping with one guy, I won't be worn out, so now I can make up lost time and sleep with 10. And that's where
Okay.
my mind goes. And when I tried to go to therapy many years ago, I told my therapist I like to call it hoe mode, where I do this and I black out. Like I don't remember most of the sexual encounters that I had that weekend.
And I just want to say, make it clear also, nobody is saying that if someone in their clear mind makes a choice to be promiscuous, that of course is perfectly fine if that's
Oh God,
a
yeah,
choice that a person makes, right? But we're talking about, using sex almost like, not almost, but using sex like a drug, right?
yeah.
Overindulging in it and just becoming obsessed, and it's just, that's the type of sexual encounter that we're
And I
talking about.
think too, it's for me. Um, I use it as also because if anybody has done chemsex, you know that most of the guys that you're able to obtain during the act and usage of this drug, you wouldn't normally be able to get without the substance. So like me, I'm a bigger guy. Um, and this dude that I see, I'm like, ooh, he's hot. I would immediately get rejected. But if I'm like, oh, he's into chemsex, and I'm like, hey, I got a bag, you want to come over? He's immediately like, hell yeah, let's do it, without caring about my body appearance. And so I've kind of used it in a way to feel desired by men that otherwise wouldn't pay attention to me. And I use it for a sense of validation, because even though I'm being used for the drug, even though I'm being used for my glorious Gluck Gluck 3000 and other things, that at the end of the day, like they don't want me, they just wanted what I had to offer. So and then that's when like the kind of the depression hits after. Like when I came back from Florida, I was like, for one, sad because of the relapse again, but two, because I knew that nobody that I took part in with I would get ever see again. I would never really talk to again. And so I literally gave up a month and a half worth of sobriety again for um, a quick weekend of feeling wanted, I would say.
And see, now I know this is about you, but just for just a brief moment, um, I've been through phases where I've been, and this is in recovery. I've been through phases where I've been promiscuous, but recently, like in last couple of years, it's been almost the opposite. And it's not that I'm not willing to be promiscuous, but I feel like I want someone to see me. Um, you know, just having the anonymous or barely, speaking 1, 2, 3 is just not enough for me anymore. So I can relate to feeling like that because I almost feel the same way. It's like I feel like I can kind of like lure them in with my physical appearance, but they're not really interested in me as a person, the person that's in there. They're just kind of wanting this shell. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of turns me off, and that's why I have had so few sexual encounters because I want someone to see me. Now, if I if there's anyone out there who can see me, no, seriously, if I meet someone like that and we can, because like a fuck buddy is fine, but I always only get the fuck part. I never get the buddy. So if I
See,
was
no,
able to
but me and
have,
you were buddies, but we're missing the other part. No, I'm kidding.
but if I was able to have that type of relationship, I would be wild. I mean, because honestly, in recovery, I feel freer sexually than I did before because I like who I am now. I'm more in touch with my authentic self. I'm able to be present in all these things, um, which makes me more powerful sexually, but not in an anonymous, for me, not in an anonymous kind of random setting. So,
And what's
um,
crazy though is I don't desire to have multiple partners, and that's like I like I mean if anybody listens that wants to holler, say hey girl, but no, I desire a partner in marriage and
sure.
settling down and living that like old life where you're just like chilling, watching TV, just bullshitting with each other, and it's like I don't understand like why those two go so hand in hand for me, but yet it's so far like the whole meth and sex, like, but that's so far from what I actually desire and want. I just like I would just like a partner and feel wanted from that partner and desired and not um that I'm just another hole for them to use or another checklist on their fucking grinder profile. So
Uh,
it's it's crazy.
well, whole another podcast. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And in the meantime, yeah, there's nothing, I would, I had great group sex, not in recovery, I don't think. Have I? Oh, I did in recovery. Oh my God. And it was great. But like I said, yeah, I mean, it was kind of the thing that I kind of stumbled into organically. It wasn't like I was in some drug haze and so it was a choice that I made with a clear mind and I enjoyed it and I was very present. But yeah, I mean, I would love that solidity, that security, that foundation of just having um, that person, that relationship.
Mhm.
But this is whole, like I said, another podcast. But yeah, and as you know, we've had this discussion. At my age, I'll be 55 next month.
Oh, that's it. I
Um,
thought you were older.
girl, cut you. Um, you know, I'm coming to I'm coming to peace with the fact that the possibility that I may not have another serious relationship. Lots of people are interested, so don't feel sad for me, right? I'm holding up pretty well. But like I said, lots of people want to play, but not many want to stay. Ooh. So, but anyway, we've kind of strayed.
Yes.
Um, so now that you've gotten some good information, right? So, because like this is the other thing, a lot of times when we go through these situations and relapse happens, because it's a part of recovery, does it have to be? But it definitely is. This is still valuable information, right? So you gain valuable information. What insights do you have that you plan to use and hope to keep in the forefront of your mind going forward?
You know, three words: trust no hoe. No, I'm kidding. Um, no, it's the fact of what's so weird is like I'm 2 weeks or no 3 weeks coming off that relapse, and I am more motivated in my journey than I was when I first started in October 23rd of 2021. Um, because now it's like I realize that I'm the only one that's eventually gonna make it or break it for me. Like it's
Hmm.
up to me to take that action. It's up to me to put my sobriety first and foremost. It's up to me to have self love and not have to beg to be desired or put myself in that situation just to feel desired for those few hours of highness. So um and it's surrounding myself with people that show compassion and love, even if it's just as a friend, and show care. Because I said in the episode today that I've recorded, it's crazy that most of my drinking friends, I hear from them maybe she I've heard from some of them maybe three times in almost a year.
Hmm.
But yet people in my recovery circle, like if I don't hit you up in like 3 or 4 days, you're like, hey girl, what's going on? Like you we haven't talked, or like the moment I remove myself from a group, like you're immediately texting me, figuring out what's up, like are you okay? What, like checking in. So it's me being just super mindful to make sure I put people in my life that actually care about my sobriety and care about my success in this journey, and that only want to see me progress and get better. But it's also the fact of I don't need like I don't need somebody else's validation to feel loved. And so it's kind of going on this self-love journey as well. But yeah, I think this time around it's me realizing that at the end of the day, the only person that is ever going to put my sobriety first and foremost is myself.
Mm,
And I don't know. It's a super weird feeling recently. Because the first relapse, man, it was like 3 weeks of like just fucking self hatred and self pity and self wallowing. And like this time around, I had a good couple days of that, but that was probably like just coming down off of everything I did.
mm,
Um, but after that, like kind of a light bulb went off in my head, and of bitch, like get it together, move forward. Um, I listened to Macklemore's song like on fucking repeat about his relapse, and it's
mhm.
like he says, once I was an example of getting sober, but now I can be an example of starting over. Just because I had these slips doesn't mean that I'm any less than in my recovery.
Right.
Chelsea, she's been on the show twice. When I she chomped me a new one. I This is after my first relapse. I said I only have 30 days, and she like popped off on me about don't you ever dare say only in front of your sobriety time, because she goes, there are people that, for one, can't make it to 24 hours, can't even
Mm,
get that. She goes, and there's others that never get the chance to even try to get their first 24 hours. So she's like, no matter whether you're 24 hours in, 5 hours in, or 15 years in, like your sobriety time is something to be proud of. So it's me trying not to focus so much on the time that I have sober now. It's me now focusing on just being sober. Like, don't worry about me having 2 days a month or year. It's worry about today, worry about what I can do today to stay sober, and what I can do um, today for self care and mental health and everything like that. So I'm a lot more excited this time around and a lot more motivated and pushing forward. I mean, the past few episodes of the podcast, I've been kind of just recording just to get content out there for the listeners. But today, I mean, I had like 3 episodes scheduled. Unfortunately, I had some cancellations and movement. But I was able to record 2 episodes today, and I was actually like excited. Woke up early, wanted to record, was excited to talk to the people, and super excited to talk recovery again. Um, and I think hopefully the listeners can tell the excitement. I understand the first 40 minutes of this episode were kind of um, sad, unfortunately, but guess what? Like sometimes recovery is not all sparkles and unicorns,
right.
as Sky said in the previous episode, if you've listened. But um, sometimes it's sadness and tears and emotions and everything. And it's just I'm grateful to be able to have the 2 weeks or 3 weeks over that I have now, and grateful that even though I did relapse and it sucks, that hopefully somebody I encounter a year from now, 5 years from now in my journey, and they slip up again or they slip up, and they're thinking about leaving any program, or they're thinking about just saying fuck the entire sobriety thing, I can be like, girl, look here, motherfucker. Like I did the same thing. Like don't worry. Like you can find, and that's what Chelsea's episode is about, is you can find success in sobriety after a relapse. She relapsed 3 years in, and now she's over 7 years sober. So it's yeah, I'm just excited, and I'm excited to see what this next part of the journey is going to take me. And I feel that my relapses and the lessons learned within those relapses will really benefit me in the future and benefit my relationships and um, my sexual conquests. I mean, so who knows? There could be a train ran on me next week, and but I'll be sober this time.
Yeah, I mean, just like I said, the main thing is to make sure that recovery is a priority, and that it is kind of sitting center stage in your life, regardless of what's going on. Um, because I know for me, it's the foundation that everything else is built on. I know you hear that a lot in different recovery spaces, but for me, it's true. Because if I'm not at my best, my most authentic, then I'm not my most effective. I can't reach the most people. I can't help be the most helpful. Um, and yeah, I mean, so that's really what it's about.
And talking about
And
being authentic, I think, like I said earlier, like at the beginning of my sobriety time, I was like, I faked it. So I was not even authentic to myself, to my sponsor, to anybody in recovery. Really, I just lied my way through. And I think that's why this time in the relapses and I'm trying to be as transparent with myself, with my listeners, and with the people in my life as possible, because you can't build your success off of lies and deceit and self deception. You have to build it off of transparency and honesty um, and truth.
I do want to say this also, right? So I came into the rooms when I was 48, right? I had a lot of time to try and work this thing out on my own, right? If I could have found a way to drink and use without burning down my life, I would have. When I finally got to that place where I just said, I cannot do this anymore, I was 48. I was out of ideas and solutions, and I was ready to try something else. You guys, lots of people are much younger. And so I applaud people who are younger because it's much harder because I know you haven't had the experience of life that I've had of trying, right? So, I mean, that's kind of the first essential question of, you know, do I want to be sober, right? And if I want to be sober, why do I want to be sober, right? I mean, and this is something that one needs to ask themselves. This isn't something that, you need to, you know, talk about necessarily, but you need to know, right? Because maybe you're just wanting to be sober to please a man, or maybe you're just wanting to be sober to keep a job, or maybe you're wanting to be sober because you can't see yourself living the way you've been living up until now. Any of those reasons can be valid, but they need to be your truth. Because trying to live someone else's truth to be sober won't work.
Well, and I think beforehand, I went into an industry that was very substance related, because many people in that industry, funeral industry, it's 70% usage when it comes to alcohol and other narcotics. And so I felt that that's why I needed to get sober the first time, was I'm going into this industry before I dive headfirst in. I need to get sober and get control of this. But now that the relapses have occurred, it's now like I'm now doing it for myself, because I've seen how I am 9 months sober, and I saw how I was these two times that I relapsed, and I don't like the person that I saw, and it's like I don't want to become that person
Hmm.
again. And so now I think it's this time it's not about longevity in a career; it's more about just wanting to be a better version of Holden and be a better version of myself. And like you said, you got sober at 48. I'm 31, and it's crazy to see the younger generation get sober, especially I know people in recovery that are 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
And it's insane because drugs and narcotics are so much easier to come by. Like when you, like in the 60s, when you were in your 20s. um no, but
Wine,
it's like
wine, eh?
but like but older generation, it was easy to come by, like freaking weed. But like I can't imagine in the 80s or 90s trying to find meth. I mean, nowadays it's freaking go down to Lancaster and Fort Worth and bam, you got yourself some.
Yeah, and I came up in the club scene, and it was mostly cocaine. Meth was kind of taboo, and I don't even remember the first time that I saw it. So yeah, it was more of a taboo thing, and I didn't even really know like what it was exactly. Um, but yeah, it was mostly cocaine. But I was living in Miami too, so
Mm,
um,
Florida,
uh,
man.
yeah, the Miami in the '90s. Oh my God. But yeah, I mean, and like I said, the main thing is understanding what it is you really want because
Hmm.
your true motive will always shine through, right? a person's true motive will always shine through. So we can say whatever we want, but if we really want something else, eventually, you know, our actions will kind of be pointed in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just important to understand what it is you really want. If you find you're struggling, yeah, sit down and think, what is it, that I really want? Because clearly, if the words and the deeds are not in line, then there's something there, right? And again, that's personal work. That's something that one would have to do with themselves or a sponsor or a therapist or someone else, right? I mean, I couldn't tell someone that, um, but yeah, but once you get to that place where you know what it is exactly you want, then you're able to move into that space in a more effective way. So
Yeah, and I think it's important, no matter whether you're 12-step recovery or not, lean into somebody else. Like,
right, do
find a
something.
sober person. Like, I mean, there's so many groups on Facebook, and go to us like I mean, go to the Sober Unicorn's Instagram, find somebody in the following list. I mean, just reach out, because no matter whether it's somebody's a 12-step program or not, like, they will be there to help and talk to you and listen.
Right,
And that's, I think many people in addiction is always scared to go to somebody else, because we think that our addiction was like the worst, and what we've done within our addiction was just so horrid. And it's like, talk to another addict, because guess what, bitch, like,
right,
what you did in the active addiction was the most of the addicts that are recovered. So I I
right.
I reach out to somebody. I think that's a
Yeah,
huge thing in recovery.
yeah, and you have to do something because for me, I identify as an addict, right? And so if I my default setting is to use. If I don't do any work to actively push away from my default setting, I'm going to use. So I've got to be active towards recovery. So whatever it is, if you're 12 step, fine. If you're something else, fine. But you got to do something. Doing nothing is you're going to sit in your default setting. And if
Hmm.
you're someone who finds that once you start using, you can't stop, or you know you're burning down relationships and turning into someone that you don't recognize, then you might have a problem. And and so yeah, you may need to take some action to fight against reverting to that person. Um, so
Exactly. No, I fully get it. All right, Daniel, is there any other questions you had for me before we wrap up the episode?
no, I think we've covered it. Yeah, it's been a lot of great information. Like I said, relapses are difficult for people to go through, but make it make it mean something, right? And the information, the things that you learn as you go through that process of finding your footing again, is all valuable information, invaluable, because it's not information you had before you had the relapse. So make it all mean something, and let's move past this pass fail type of mentality, right? Because recovery is not pass fail. If someone relapses, they haven't failed. Um, you know, they've just reached a place in their recovery where they're struggling. Um, they're struggling with some things, and that's fine. We all struggle. Um, but yeah,
Exactly. So everybody, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and hope you enjoyed the switcheroony of host and hostess. Uh, well, thank you, Daniel, so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day.
thank you for your openness, and I will talk to you soon. Bye,
All right.
everybody.
Bye. Thank you again for listening to today's episode. Hit that follow button to be notified about new episodes every week. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Instagram at The Sober Unicorn Podcast or on our website at thesoberunicornpodcast.com. There you will find our episodes as well as our very own sober owned shop featuring products from small businesses that are sober owned. And remember everyone, don't be normal, be a unicorn, but better yet, be a sober unicorn.